In the northeast of England, it will be drier, although still rather cloudy. Some bright or sunny spells are possible towards the north through the afternoon, with some outbreaks of rain possible in the south later. There will be a chillier feel. For those of us who are in southern Scotland, it will also be a rather cloudy day, but the odd bright or sunny spell remains possible. Northern Ireland will be a little milder, but also rather cloudy. The odd shower is also possible, along with a few brighter spells in the east. It will be rather breezy too. Remaining dry and clear in the north, the rain elsewhere edging east with showers following in the west. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage. I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome to a special edition of We Need to Talk About. I'm Alex Phillips, and this is a look back at some of the big questions I've been posing in 2021. And on Christmas Day, it feels appropriate to ask, are we still a Christian country? My first choice focuses on the falling popularity of the church and whether our increasingly secular society lacks the moral compass that religion once gave us. Politics and religion, never to be brought up in polite company. To ask someone their beliefs, secular or theological, was for a long time cultural taboo. Yet today has seen an explosion in political identity. Remainer, Leaver, Socialist, Conservative, Marxist, Libertarian, Communist. The centre ground ceded to a rebirth of political polarity. But what about religion? While imported religions are emboldened in our multi-faith society to proudly wear the tags of identity, the religion of this country sits meekly in the corner, oftentimes derided, denied, and discarded. The official religion of the United Kingdom is Protestant Christianity. The Church of England, our state church, and the monarch, the supreme governor. Our Queen was anointed defender of the faith by the Archbishop of Canterbury during her coronation in Westminster Abbey almost 70 years ago. Yet, as head of the Commonwealth and sovereign of modern Britain, she has very much styled herself as defender of all faiths. Christianity in Britain is not something that screams about its existence, but is intrinsically woven into the fabric of our society. Or perhaps the fabric of our society is woven into it. To grow up British is in many respects to grow up culturally Christian, even though doctrinal Christianity is under assault. Christianity is like many particles of air, breathed in, but totally imperceptible. The values by which we expect others to live find their genesis in the Bible. Historian Tom Holland compared the ancients' brutality and savagery to society today, the uncompromising supremacy and hierarchy of might banished to the realms of our cruel and inhumane ancestors. Unthinkable in today's world of welfare that fights exploitation, advocates universal rights, and promotes what have become accepted moral virtues. How did we get from there to here? In short, Christianity utterly transformed the world. For many of us, our interaction with Christianity is at once inherent yet invisible. Our occasional practice exhibited, perhaps perversely, as consumers for what have become primarily commercialised festivals. Congregations have collapsed, while consensuses betray a sharp decline in religious engagement. Yet how many of us, when facing tragedy, turn in desperation to prayer, despite perhaps not being able to identify what it is that we believe? God on speed dial during an emergency. Faith is an inevitable and intractable part of the human condition. And so the pandemic did something quite remarkable. Despite churches shutting physical doors, online congregations swelled. Forced to embrace new forms of engagement as people feared for their lives and for their loved ones, God became pastor and pedagogue on Zoom. The direction of travel until recently had been quite the opposite. At the start of the 20th century, 2/3 of the world's Christians lived in Europe. At the start of this century, it's just a quarter. Here in the UK, for the first time in history, the number of Britons describing themselves as Christian has fallen below 50%. Even 20 years ago, that figure was 72%. Today, the vast majority identify as having no religion at all. But what does this mean for the church? Do we now live in a post-Christian era? Through expunging and uprooting the basic tenets of Judeo-Christian values, what takes their place? New secular religions that clash and compete, social justice campaigners fighting for the prioritisation of their set of rights. Increasingly under attack is the pursuit of moral consensus, the idea that one set of rules, freed from the frailty of the human condition and sacrosanct via providence in a higher power, governs us all. What happens when the Christian focus on collectivism is judged by today's precedents of individualism? Yet, as Christianity appears forced into decline, more and more are yearning for what it provides. Statistics reinforce that children brought up in the Christian faith are less likely to take drugs, get divorced, or get into trouble with the law. There's massive competition to get kids into church schools. We seem to want the trappings of Christianity, yet our fidelity is flippant and our faith shaken by the agnosticism of the post-industrial age. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously proclaimed, "God is dead." But any Christian will tell you, he has an uncanny way of resurrecting. Today, we really need to talk about the church. How does Christianity reconcile itself with modernity? Does Christianity need to adapt? Or actually, should it remain the stalwart and the fulcrum of morality around which the rest of society pivots?
I think the first thing to do is that Christianity mustn't behave like an authoritarian parent. We're not here to make other people's lives miserable or to tell them what to do or to tell them what to behave. And I'm afraid too often the church has behaved a bit like that, partly because it's got infected by power. Christianity isn't always 100% authentic. It goes through periods of becoming decayed. But authentic Christianity says, the astonishing thing that is that God has given us a gift of freedom. So you're entirely free to be polyamorous or to live in any way you like. The thing to do is to be honest and to test what it does for you. Living within certain moral boundaries, because they're there not to inhibit us, but to protect us. And one of the things you see when you lose moral boundaries is that people get really badly damaged. And we have a whole culture of young people now without any sexual boundaries who are complaining bitterly that they've been wounded and hurt and are finding it very difficult to establish places of safety and trust. Well, one of the things Christian morality did was not to oppress people with rules, but to give them safety behind boundaries so that our tender personalities, our tender souls, our tender bodies don't get too wounded and maimed, because when they are wounded and maimed, we take it out on each other.
I believe that Christianity gives us a foundation that's stronger than anything else. I also believe that if you look at the values of other systems, other faiths, and other values, and liberalism, for example, what liberalism has essentially morphed into is a very narrow creed that doesn't tolerate anything that steps outside of what it decides is right or wrong, whereas true Christianity is more generous than that. True Christianity places a huge value on the conscience, and it says you shouldn't go against your conscience. So therefore there should be freedom of belief, freedom of religion, freedom of worship. Those great principles that are woven into our society actually came from Christianity.
Why do we live in a country, albeit growing perhaps increasingly secular, where we actually offer respect and protection to religions that aren't necessarily the domestic religion, and what has been the fabric of our society, our own national religion, we feel happy to attack and tinker with?
Well, of course, that's absolutely not true. Christianity is protected and privileged beyond any other religion in this country.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that? Because I really don't agree with you on that.
Well, for a starter, we have a state church.
But that hasn't necessarily protected the religion, has it?
By law. Anglican bishops sit upright as legislators in our House of Lords, deciding on laws
as
that
do
affect
rabbis,
all
as do people of the Muslim faith, as do Hindus.
No other group in society has 26 seats reserved as of right for them, simply on the basis of their position in a particular religious authority. So that's just not true. The Christians
Christianity being the state religion has left it vulnerable to change, hasn't it? Because if Christianity wasn't the state religion, there is no way that Parliament could have decreed on the Gay Marriage Act affecting the Church of England. It certainly didn't turn around and say, right, we must permit homosexual marriage in the Christian faith, in the Church of England. They didn't dare say that to mosques and temples and synagogues, did they? So perhaps actually what you're saying doesn't work in Christianity's favour.
It absolutely works in Christianity's favour. The seats that the bishops have in the House of Lords gives them the kind of access to political power that other religious groups and other special interest groups and all the rest of us could only dream of. It's because we've got Christians in Parliament that we have faith schools, for example. But we also have laws that actually mandate Christian worship in state schools, not just faith
But parents
schools,
can choose to. But no, hold on. It mandates having an assembly of a broadly Christian theme. I think by and large that is becoming more secular, and parents have the right to remove their children from that if they're uncomfortable with the way the school is perhaps teaching in that assembly.
Yes, parents have the right to withdraw their children, but why should a parent have to withdraw their children? I mean, I believe in secularism. That means I don't think anyone's beliefs should be imposed on anybody. I think we should have a neutral space where everyone's free to believe whatever they want, but no one has the right to impose those beliefs on others. But Christianity is so privileged in the UK that Christianity is often imposed on people who don't share that religion. For example, in faith schools, 3 in 10 families have no choice other than a faith school, and that will usually be a Christian school. We have prayers imposed in schools. We have prayers beginning all parliamentary sessions begin with Christian prayers. So Christianity is imposed in a myriad of ways that in no other faith is.
Stay with us after the break. We really need to talk about artificial intelligence. See you in a couple of minutes.
Someone like Ricky Gervais in this country, he says whatever he wants and he doesn't care
about because he can't be cancelled. I still think that even he toes the line a little bit. I usually he thinks about it. I mean, I do think he considers it. You have to, because the weird thing is, like for me, like what I feel about what's happening right now. I mean, I feel like I could talk about it on stage because I'm established, but I also think like, if you're partners with the biggest streaming service in the world, and then if you also, you're doing a commercial for this international company, and so you have to think, what, how much do I really want to rock the boat? So I do think that sometimes I think people forget that this is supposed to be an irritant. You are supposed to, as a comedian, you're supposed to be controversial. You're supposed to take the other side. You're supposed to get the audience to question their foundational thinking.
That ability to look away and let things be is a sign of maturity. And behind closed doors, and this is what the racism of law expectations is about, is with those Muslims, they're just not there yet. That's really what it boils down to.
That's a really interesting point as far as that. Is it this expectation that Muslims are likely to react violently if they're upset? That's a very patronising
because the Christians used to do that in the past. They're over it now.
Right.
They're old enough, they're mature enough, they're adults. The assumption is if you're a Muslim, a drawing of the Prophet Muhammad, whether it's flattering or not, is going to offend you. Can you look away?
Well, it's not necessarily true that all Muslims would be offended.
Well, first of all, it's not true.
Yeah.
That's again why I think it's a form of racism, and it's a form of, in itself, if you want to pursue the notion of Islamophobia,
yes.
It is actually a form of phobia.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
You're watching the best bits of We Need to Talk About. My next choice fast forwards us to a future which, as artificial intelligence improves and becomes more powerful, will all feel its impact on our daily lives. And I'm asking, should we fear AI? If, like me, the peak of your IT ability begins and ends with Windows 98, and even a basic formula on a spreadsheet is cause for despair, well, you've probably allowed the stupefyingly rapid pace of technological advancements to wash over you and are equivalent to Y2K technological flotsam and jetsam. Yes, you may now use Face ID to unlock your phone, ask your in-car sat-nav to figure out your journey rather than leaf through the pages of Ordnance Survey, and get peeved trying to prove to Google you aren't a robot by selecting pixelated boxes of traffic lights. But the latter may be an eerie harbinger of what lies ahead, because artificial intelligence is on the rampage, And there is a serious arms race taking place around the world, which will unleash a largely unregulated, untested, and potentially limitless technology upon us all. Sci-fi films and robot movies almost always explore the concept that automatons may one day escape the grip of human control, evolve free will, and turn against us. But actually, the reality might be quite the opposite. You see, the risk of AI is that however clever it gets, however much machine learning can outpace the human brain with processing speeds, get this, 10 million times faster, the gulf between human reasoning and computer logic is still enormous. A computer can win a game of chess once all the potential rules and moves are programmed in, calculating at split-second speeds an infinite number of outcomes. But the nuances of rational thought can be rather lost on our pre-programmed friend, leading to petty frustrations or catastrophic disasters. Ask artificial intelligence to build a machine to get between point A and B in the fastest time possible. And rather than develop a flying craft to speed through the skies at a record pace, it could simply decide to forge a gigantic tower and topple across the gap, indeed joining the 2 points at the speed of gravity, yet causing quite a lot of mess in the process. AI will do exactly as you say, without limitation, unless you, the human, can foresee all the potential interpretations and ensure unwanted ones are coded out. See, this is potentially the real risk of AI, especially in a military setting, where the response times of machine learning far outstrip considered reason, essential in warfare to allow for de-escalation and avert disaster. AI is now being applied everywhere in ways most mortal beings struggle to comprehend. It is an unprecedented and potent technology, fast being harnessed by a tiny few, without regulation or restriction. As the world tools up for a major arms race to develop this incredible, godlike technology at an astonishing speed, how do we regulate something that can wield so much power and outstrip mortal competencies? Who are the AI puppeteers? Do they know what they're messing with? And are their intentions pure? Far from the adorable domestic robot in the Jetsons, AI has the potential to unburden humanity from laborious calculations and decisions bound by human limitation. But is enthusiastically gifting our agency to a machine really a good thing? Or are we headed for a dystopian disaster? Today, we really need to talk about AI. Is there a risk that comes with developing this technology that overrides things like deliberation and constructive debate and therefore trying to de-escalate situations?
There is, if you rely on machine learning or artificial intelligence to make the decisions, but we don't. We rely on human beings. There's been a version of machine learning around for many, many years in the military and in intelligence. And, certainly, a lot of the time whenever I was fed information that came through and it came in, you make a judgment call on something and you go, that may not be completely right. And we had what was soak time. And I go away and make a cup of tea and come back again. And as I finished the cup of tea, invariably the information would have changed a little bit as the assessments changed or more information came in. And that sort of process is in place. We have to make sure that we understand the algorithms and they're put together. The base data is critical, especially when it comes to learning. And this is where the biggest threats come in, because if your enemy, if a criminal organization or an enemy organization can get in and mess around with the base data that you've got, then you've got garbage in, garbage out, and they're stimulating more garbage out. So there are a lot of issues that come out of this. And it's the technology of today and of the future, and something we have to embrace.
Yeah, I mean, talking about it being the technology of today and the future, sources in the Pentagon have expressed deep concern about the pace of progress in China, because the CCP have put development of artificial intelligence right at the heart of their strategy for China over coming decades. Is that something we should be worried about, or can we be reassured that the people working in this sector creating these incredible innovative technologies that bypass the limitations of human thought processes are going to use these things for good?
No, we have to be extremely worried, especially about China's advancement in anything to do with the development of technology. We look at the way that China's been using its facial recognition technology combined with machine learning to identify members of the Uyghur population so that they can then put them into their what they euphemistically call retraining camps. That is where we can see these tools being used for bad effect. And China can turn around and throw resources at stuff from a national perspective that we can't do in the West, because our governments would far rather invest in our health services, our social care, and everything else, and haven't got the ability to throw the sorts of money that China can do and the sorts of effort that China can do at these sorts of things.
I mean, I didn't realise in doing my research, I kind of thought of it more as, when you swipe up on your phone and it uses facial recognition technology, but it can start to predict things like, certain diseases and create antidotes for certain diseases by using complex technologies and calculating systems to render the perfect medicine. It's phenomenal. I mean, is there a limit to what we can do? Should there be a limit to what we can do?
To me, a lot of reports, they would be coming in the market. Like I can see in the screen, this is a report by the Boston group. And you can see they can walk. And in fact, if you think they can pretty much imitate any human move, and you might be wondering how we train them. When a child, he wants to ride a bicycle and he don't know what to do. So their mother or the father, they told them, hey, when the bike is coming on the left, just shift your way to the right. If the bike is going on the right, shift your way to the left. And then how they learn to ride the bike. Similarly, we teach robots, hey, you want to jump, so this is the move you have to do. If you're going to fall on the left, shift your way to the right. So this is just like how child works. So robots for AI, they are just children, and we train them using the softwares, and they learn very fast like children.
Joining me now is the Senior Vice President at multinational computer technology company Oracle, Yvette Cameron. Yvette, tell me, what's sort of going on in the world of AI at the moment? What's Oracle developing, and what sort of things are in train that we can expect to see in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for having me on today. So at Oracle, we're investing in AI to make it pervasive across the capabilities and the functionality that we deliver. It's interesting from the conversation I just heard, the concern about AI, but we're actually finding a growing demand for AI. In fact, we just recently completed a survey about AI at work. This is our fourth in an annual survey where we're studying the interactions between individuals and technology at work. And with the pandemic and everybody feeling very disconnected and not very motivated about work and really struggling financially and with mental health, we found that 82% or 77% of individuals across the UK specifically are specifically looking for technology to help them drive their future. And in this case, artificial intelligence is exactly the kind of technology that they're looking for. Technology that's going to help them recommend ways to learn new skills, to identify the skills that they need to grow their careers, ways to identify new career paths that traditional processes and human interaction wouldn't necessarily identify. With artificial intelligence, we're able to embed an understanding of skills and adjacencies so that the robotics within the application can make these recommendations that are really unique and insightful for individuals.
How can we compile a best of the year without talking wokery? It's shaping our institutions, it's driving public policy and changing our laws. Frankly, it's dominating our conversations. It's even getting people fired from their jobs. But does being woke really help to create a more equal society? Like most days in the British media, the paper today were littered with stories reflecting the ongoing cultural crisis gripping the West. The curse of being woke. It sounds rather innocuous, one of those modern terms that older generations struggle to comprehend. A typical intergenerational conundrum, reflective of changing times, cultural development, and the natural evolution of maxims and morals. Indeed, from one era to the next, societies across the globe have metamorphosed, leaving the out of touch in a state of bewilderment over shifting semantics, beliefs, and fashions. Today is no different. Yet what was once a matter of politesse, the conscious adaptation to a cultural contract in constant flux, today invites much more than a mere tutting or the raising of eyebrows. Failure to adhere to today's woke religions can result in real-world punishment, the loss of your job, humiliation, even physical violence. And the rate of change is so dizzyingly rapid, few can keep up with stringent yet uncodified customs, or are exempt from accusations of blasphemy, while a few sacred people seem to self-appoint as judge, jury, and executioner with impunity, manipulating language to further alienate and exclude. Should we be afraid? Very. The great Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu describes the concept of divide and conquer as a devious tactic to turn the enemy in on itself. The West seems to be doing this with aplomb, aided perhaps by those who wish to do us harm. Rather than focus on external threats, society is increasingly at war with itself, accosted by a myriad perceived cultural battles, largely waged online. Remarkably, even when the threat of hostile nations is signposted, it is often internalized into accusations against ourselves. Take, for instance, allegations of Russian electoral interference, seized as an attack on a democratic decision, rather than externalized against an enemy using the power of the internet to wreak division and sow havoc in society. The dark web is full of the invading troops of foreign armies in the forms of legions of bots, amplifying tensions and pitching one side of society against the other. Yet it's not just malign foreign powers rubbing their hands with glee at so-called activists clawing at the social fabric and cultural glue that binds us together. Big business is at it too. Brands that cynically exploit cancel culture feed a network of neo-ideologies breaking the backbone of Britain and directly profit from it. Why pay for advertising when hashtags are free? Creating a social media storm boosts name recognition and can deftly target certain demographics, while woke washing corporate malpractice and greed. Take, for instance, the current trend for plant-based diets. How convenient that just as the world is waking up to the dangers of ultra-processed food and the devastation of natural habitats through intense farming, along comes a dietary craze that clothes itself in the narratives of environmentalism and well-being, conveniently served as a cuisine few can prepare in their own kitchens. As palm oil plantations grow and ready meals laden with sugars and salts purport to be healthy and sustainable, instead of having to afford meat and dairy, manufacturers can flog nutritionally bankrupt food for even bigger profit margins while feigning social righteousness as the consumer gets fatter and high-emitting factories line the pockets of multinationals. Despite cries of go woke, go broke from some consumers, big business knows all too well that boycotts and principles are often abandoned at the checkout queues and are well worth the promotional noise that they create. Meanwhile, some claim the culture wars themselves are a fabricated distraction by the very people often on the receiving end of their malice. To borrow a term so prevalent among the so-called woke brigade, it is the very definition of gaslighting. But be on the receiving end of a pseudo-moral hate campaign, and you could lose your livelihood and even have your life put at risk. All the while, the curse of intersectionality has created, it seems, a hierarchy of rights, oppressing other sections of society. The prioritisation of trans issues is seeing some women's rights under attack. And just as girls are being stabbed with syringes in nightclubs and rape culture is sweeping through schools, there's a clamour for unisex toilets, while things such as porn and promiscuity are promoted as some kind of basic freedom. Just as the pandemic exposed how obesity is costing millions of lives globally, fat shaming has become a new form of abuse. Just as the Taliban take over Afghanistan and ISIS sharpen their tools once again, Protecting Islam from offence arguably enables extremism to propagate. Even a cursory audit of wokery points to an invisible blob that wants to see you sexless, genderless, fat, afraid, mentally ill, slavishly compliant, blindly militant, hating your country, obsessed with sex, denied basic freedoms, self-flagellating, censorious, confused, and torn from your community through a nihilistic obsession with individuality and identity. Today, we need to talk about being woke.
Well, I think we should all try to be inclusive and respectful of others. I mean, way back when I began campaigning 50 years ago, the N-word to describe black people was quite common. But then black people and their allies said, no, that's a very offensive word. And now, thankfully, most people accept that you shouldn't use the N-word. It's just about showing kindness and respect. And I don't think if people make an inadvertent mistake, they should be punished or demonised. You know, we all make mistakes. So I think a bit more live and let live is needed.
But do you think that there is now a sort of witch hunt culture where people almost actively seek synthetic offence? You know, things that, frankly, if you're an adult and you go about your daily life, you shouldn't necessarily be offended if someone doesn't happen to know your pronoun. You should at least have a little bit of latitude or bandwidth to accommodate that. But in fact, it's almost becoming a militant campaign to try and find people and attack them, especially if that person has a public position.
Well, I agree. If someone has indicated to you their preferred pronoun, then just out of respect and kindness, please use it. But if you accidentally misgender them, not knowing the pronoun they would prefer, then that's just an innocent mistake, and you shouldn't be held to account. You shouldn't be cancelled because of that. You know, there was no malicious intention. It was just an accident, and accidents happen. We all make mistakes. And I think what I do say is that there is a place for some cancel culture if people are advocating extreme racism or violence or glorifying terrorism. I think they should be cancelled. But if they make some innocent mistake or slip up a bit, let's forgive. Let's give the opportunity of redemption. And I find it really stressful and strange that people with often impeccable records, they make one mistake and they're cast out.
The global woke movement is not open to hearing anything that is not getting their way. That's the only thing that they want. So they have blissful ignorance. And when you look at wokeism, it's not a codified set of principles. It's not based upon anything else but how they feel on that particular day. And they're trying to rewrite history. How do you rewrite history to try to lay out the future? It's ridiculous. They take offense to objects, individuals, events, anything that they feel at that moment is offensive. How do you have a reasonable discussion with anyone who thinks like that? You know, during my father's time, the biggest threat was the Cold War. Now in our time, the biggest threat are woke wars.
Well, yeah, Rod, I'm going to ask you about this because it's interesting. I always think that this is a culture we very much imported from America. And it's fascinating to see that you've got, you know, this week, the committee in the House of Commons receiving evidence from social media companies. Do you think that it is polarisation via, you know, platforms on social media that's driving the woke agenda? Or is there some other darker force at play?
I don't think it's a polarisation. In the way that you put it. It's not a polarisation in the way that, for example, Brexit was a polarisation. Because one of the crucial things about this thing which we call woke and which I'd rather not call woke, I'd rather call it something like the de-enlightenment, because it's a war on complexity, it's a war on history, it's a war on intelligence. That's the important thing. It's far more important than passing it off as woke. The thing you have to gather is that it is a minuscule proportion of the population who go along with the vast majority of this stuff. A tiny, tiny proportion. And yet, partly in order to do that other very contemporary thing, virtue signalling, and partly in order because they're scared stiff, an awful lot of corporations and institutions will go along with it. And that's the problem, that it's a kind of, these people do not have hegemony. You know, Peter Tatchell has hegemony. Well, you know, there aren't many things I disagree with Pete about. a few things on wokeism, and I think I disagree with him on Israel as well, so we better leave that. But by and large, these people are implacable. And the reason they're implacable, and this is important, is that none of what they say adds up. You can tug at the whole liberal woke agenda, at one little strand of it, and the whole thing falls apart like a badly knitted cardigan, because there's no logic to it, there's no sense to it, it has no intellectual basis or depth, it has no science to it. And so that's the problem. And the problem isn't so much the kids on campus, or indeed their idiotic lecturers, it's the fact that corporations and too often politicians go along with it.
I'm Alex Phillips, and you've been watching We Need to Talk About. And for the last half an hour, you've been watching my standout moments of 2021. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. That's it for today. I'll see you next time. You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan